Well, welcome everyone. Happy Wednesday. Thanks so much for joining us. And again, always impressed how many people from around the world tune in for this study hall. Today we have a very special study hall for you. We have Peter Marks here with us today. And Peter, today's format is a tasting, right?
That's correct.
Great.
Exactly right, Christian. We've got three wines we're going to taste blind to test everybody's knowledge once I do a WSET style tasting note and then have them try to decipher what the wines are.
Okay, so you heard it, everyone. Today is going to be asked for some interaction and participation. So Peter will walk through a tasting note. You have the wines, I take it with you, and then you will select the correct answers. So make sure and participate. Use the comment box. So with that, Peter, I'm just going to hand over the presentation to you.
Great. Thanks, you, Christian. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Wednesday. It's a nice rainy Wednesday in Napa. We certainly need the rain. It's going to be raining, looks like, for another week, so that's good. We definitely could use it. So I hope everybody's safe and healthy. I do have three wines, as Christian mentioned, that we're going to go through. And these are wines that would definitely be found or could be found on the WSET Level 3 exam or possibly on diploma as well. Well, actually, two of the wines could be on a WSET, but one of them could not because it's not. We don't do sparkling wines as part of the level 3, but with level 4 you do. In fact, my first wine, it's kind of hard to see there, but this is a sparkling wine because how do I know? Because it has some bubbles, and it's always good to start the day with some bubbles. And this wine, to me, has a clear, pale, and actually, I know you can't see this, and I'm wearing a dark sweater, so you can't really see, but look how pale that is. And also, it's amazing that we don't usually call the color anything but lemon for young wines, but I'm going to have to disagree and call this lemon green. This has actually got even more green than lemon color. It's something that you will typically find when you have a very young wine. Anytime you see any green cast or green tinge, that's probably because the wine is quite young. And again, there's some bubbles there. Not really, they're kind of streaming slowly, and they're not a lot of them. And in a way, they kind of look large, which might give me a little indication that what the method might be. We can talk about that as we get into it. So let's see how it smells. Just kind of holding it away from my nose. And even right here, I can kind of smell something. So this would be either medium plus or pronounced once I'm not even putting the glass up to my nose. So at this distance, if I can smell it, it's at least medium plus or pronounced. But I'm not picking up a lot of definition on the aromas. I just get a little bit of floral character and nothing that I can really describe distinctly. So that's why I call it medium plus. If I put it right up to my nose, now the aromas come out. So let me just put to the slide here and give you a little heads up of what's going to taste like. As you can see, the medium plus, I get some white blossoms, acacia, elderflower, green apple, pear drop. You know what pear drop is? It's those tiny little candies. My grandmother used to have those when I would visit her in New Jersey, and a little bowl of candies, and those hard candies that she would always have right there. Sometimes there'd be a strawberry one, and sometimes there'd be a cherry one, but I always like the lemon drop ones, as well as the pear drop. Also a little grapefruit, some lemon, a little bit of peach, not ripe peach necessarily, but sort of a peach skin. And even there's a little bit of a minerality, just a touch of a whetstone note. So let's go ahead and have a taste. Get my little spittoon here. Yum. Wow. I'm just going to say the wine is fresh. It's juicy. I mean, I'm not using the WSET description here, but it's just really lively and fresh. Okay, so it is not entirely, well, it's kind of dry. Now I'm tasting it again. I think I might even describe this as off-dry. I tasted it earlier today, but now that I'm going back, it does have a little bit of an off-dry character. So either dry or off-dry would be a correct answer. Acid's about medium plus. Alcohol, alcohol's medium, sort of medium body. There is a nice creaminess to the mousse. Also, just for the diploma students, I don't get any bitterness at all, which kind of indicates a pretty good quality. Sometimes with sparkling wines that are less expensive, you get a little bit of a phenolic or bitter edge to them. And I don't pick that up at all. Then flavors on the nose are similar, or flavors on the palate are similar to what we found on the nose, as is the intensity. So that's medium plus. And then the finish is pretty good. I'm going to go medium plus on that. So overall, this wine has really good balance. I think it's got good intensity because medium plus will give that a mark on the intensity metric. And then it's got very good complexity. And what I'm doing here, for those of you who aren't familiar with WSET, we use the acronym BLIC: balance, length, intensity, and complexity. So what that means is you take those four things. If it's balanced, you give it a check mark. And this, the harmonious balance of this wine, because the fresh flavors are definitely balanced by that bright acidity. The body and the alcohol are medium, and that's really nice and integrated. And there's a slight creaminess on the palate from the carbonation. So all of that balances really well. Intensity of the aromas is medium plus, as I said, and if it's medium plus or pronounced, you give it a check mark for that. Complexity, you can see the number of aromas and flavors, quite a bit to choose from. If it was only like 5, or at the most maybe 6, we would probably call that a simple wine, but this is far from that. And then the wine is a little bit missing the finish that you would call a long finish. So because of that, we're not going to give it a check mark on the finish or the length, but we do give it for balance, intensity, and complexity. Okay, so that's 3 out of those 4. And with 3 out of 4, we consider this to be a very good wine. If this wine had a long finish, that means 4 out of the 4 metrics would have been achieved, and that would have been a wine that would have gotten an outstanding rating. And also the fact that this wine is so pretty and youthful and bright, it seems to me that it's not going to improve in the bottle. It will be good for another year or 2, but I love the freshness and the brightness, and I think this is a wine you definitely want to drink now. All right, so I can't see if any of you have gotten any guesses in your mind, but here are the options for what the wine can be. Is it a Cremant Alsace, a Cremant Loire, a Prosecco from Conegliano Valdobbiadene, or is it a simple Prosecco? So there's 2 qualities of Proseccos you probably are familiar with. The Prosecco DOC, which would be wine D, or the DOCG, which would be wine C. So which wine do you think this is? Go ahead and use the chat function and put in your notes. And Christian, you can let me know what the thinking is on that.
So we have a lot of thinking on it. A lot of people putting in C. So Cogliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco. Overwhelmingly, it looks like C is the preferred answer.
Well, I did start with an easy wine. Just kidding. Yes, I think, the fact that this is, put it up here, what we got. There you go. So this is a really nice Prosecco from Mazzotina. And this is a producer that actually, you don't have the back label, but on the back label, it does say Prosecco Superiore, Conegliano Valdobbiadene. It also says Rive di Agliano. Rive is the vineyard or small village site. So this is a village site within that region, even more specific on the label, really defining that this wine is a very, very high quality. This wine, like I said, has everything but the finish, and it's just so beautifully balanced. There's no bitterness in the overall palate impression. If this wine was a simple Prosecco, the finish would be a little shorter. The flavors would not be, and aromas would not be as complex. The acidity might be a little softer too. But and then for cremants, cremants are made in the traditional method, so you would have probably had a much finer bubbles. You would maybe had a little bit of autolytic character. For Cremant de Loire, those are usually made from Chenin Blanc, and that would have a much higher acidity as well. All right, so those of you who got that right, way to go. We'll keep plugging along, and we'll move on to wine number 2. Hopefully keep that win streak going. So this is wine number 2. You can see the notes there. So this is a red wine. And when I look at this red wine, it's kind of right in between put that there, sort of right in between medium and deep in the intensity. So right on the cusp. I would accept an answer of either medium or deep if this was a paper that somebody had written that down. Ruby is a color as well. You know, if I look at the rim, there's just a slight fading on the rim, and you can maybe see, just it's hard to see again on my picture here, but just a little bit of maybe not as bright ruby as a young wine. So there's a little bit of bottle age here, but it's dominated by the ruby color. Now, putting this right up here below my chin, I can smell it already, and I'm getting a plethora of aromas here. I'm getting lots of violets. I'm getting red fruits like red currant, red cherry, red plum, black fruits, black currant, blackberry, black cherry, black plum. There's also dried fruit, which is amazing. This is really complex. Prune, fig, little raisin. I love the description the WSET uses, preserved fruits. You know, sort of like a jam, more of a dry jam, and a little bit of pepper there. There's also some secondary notes, some oak. I feel there's some vanilla, some toast, a little cedar, even chocolate. And a couple of things that I haven't mentioned yet, but you'll see those on the slide. There's a little bit of volatile acidity. And what do I mean by that? Or often known as VA. So volatile acidity can be a defect, but this wine has just a hint of it, which helps to sort of lift the aromas and bring it out to the forefront and add just that je ne sais quoi, that extra little interesting dimension. So this is the volatile acidity can be indicated by some slight vinegar smell, or sometimes a little bit of like a nail polish remover. To me, I'm getting a little bit of that balsamic vinegar smell. And then also with slight resinous, like if you go into an antique shop and there's that old wood, it's sort of that kind of smell. In addition to that, you can see I've got some tertiary notes, again, back to the dried fruit, fig and caramel, prune, a little bit of tar, and then the dried character of black currants, blackberry, black cherry, all of those dried fruits we found earlier in the aromas, and a little bit of earth and also some leather. So with all of that, it's got a nice balance between the primary, secondary, and tertiary. Not any one of those is dominating. And for that reason, I call this a developing wine. If it was more on the tertiary side, more age character, I would call it fully developed. But we're not there yet. So on the palate, dry. Wow, it's pretty. There's a certain intensity I'll get to in a second, but it's dry, medium plus acid, medium plus tannins. It's got a lot of alcohol. I mean, it feels like my face is on fire. At least the back of my throat is. Whoa. Yeah, it's got pretty good alcohol. I'm going to just leave it at that. And then body, yeah, medium plus. It's almost full, but I'm just going to say not quite. I think the alcohol gives it certainly an extra dimension of body. You know what? On second thought, full would probably be an appropriate answer as well. And then the flavors are also, again, similar to what I found on the nose. And then the finish, wow, still tasting it, just going on and on and on. Really, really nice wine. So again, conclusions, we're looking at Blick. This wine has got great balance. Maybe the alcohol is a little bit high, but there's so much intensity of fruit. There's a great structure with the acid and the tannins. Makes this wine really nicely overall balanced. Pronounced intensity, so it gets a check mark there. You can see the number of descriptions we have. This is certainly a very complex wine, and then a very long finish. Now, I think this wine could age. I do believe that with additional time in the bottle, the tertiary notes will be coming to the forefront even more so. It'll give this wine a lot more interest due to that extra dimension of complexity. And there's still also good acid and tannin, which will give this wine the longevity that it needs. So what is this? All right, so your options here are Amarone di, it should be D. I wrote the American version in there. Amarone di Valpolicella Classico, or is it a Barolo? Is it a Rioja Gran Reserva? Or is it a Zinfandel from California?
Okay, go ahead and lock in your answers in the comment section for us.
And I'm going to go back and have another sip.
Yeah. Okay, rolling in here. Okay.
Wow.
All right, great. So we have a lot of people voting D, and then the rest of them voting A as well. So D and A seem to be the favorite options here.
Yeah, that's good. And so probably most of you have discounted Barolo and Rioja Gran Reserva. And that's smart because, as I go back just to show you the structure of this wine, if this was a Barolo, it would probably be high acid and high tannin. So we're not quite high enough for a Barolo. Also for a Rioja Gran Reserva, the tannins might be a little softer. And you would probably get a lot more of that vanillin oak character. While I did get vanilla here, it wasn't really dominating as much as some of the other oak nuances. You would also maybe get a little bit of that traditional, if it is traditional American oak, maybe some dill or coconut, which is missing in this wine. So yeah, so we're sort of struck between Amarone and Zinfandel. If it was, to be honest, it could be either one. But the one thing that I think might lead it a little bit more towards wine A is that earthiness, that leather. Those are the things that makes this an Amarone. And as you can see, what they do with this wine on purpose is to dry the grapes. Sometimes they do it outside, and here this is a temperature and probably humidity controlled room where the grapes are drying for anywhere between 3 to maybe 4 or 5 months, and that concentrates everything in the grapes, so the sugar, the flavors, the acid, and the tannins, and then they make wine from it. And as a result of that really concentrated character, you're taking out all the water, you've got pretty high sugar levels. So I can bear with me for a second. It says on the back label 17% alcohol. Oof. Now that could be Zinfandel too, but the Zinfandel probably would have had maybe a little bit more of a brambly fruit. I find with Zinfandel, sort of that like wild berries, and this wine is more in that dried fruit character. So this is a definitely traditional Amarone di Valpolicella Classico, and again. Amarone, by the word Amarone comes from the Italian word for bitter, and the fact that these grapes are dried up, they're almost like little bitter raisins. But this wine doesn't have a lot of bitterness. It's got some good tannin, but it certainly has a wonderful overall balance and richness. And definitely, I would put that down for a few more years. Okay, if we don't have any questions on that, I will move on to our final wine. Okay, sure. Yeah, that's a good point as well. Yeah, exactly. Although, there could be, I'm not saying it's probably not typical. You have to sort of go with generalizations when you're describing these things. But keep in mind, Zinfandel can be blended and is often blended with other varieties. So, Carignan or Cinsault or Alicante Bouschet. And it's possible that maybe some of those other varieties might impart, especially a Syrah, if they happen to have Syrah or maybe Petit Syrah, that could have a little floral character sometimes as well. But good point, Shannon. Okay, so on to the last wine. This one is really, really interesting. I'm going to hold this up, see if you can see it, but that's the best way to get it. Yeah, it's not really showing what I wanted to show, but it's pretty pale. It's hard to see that. It's pale, and it's tawny, bordering on brown. And it's hard to see the color with our screen here, but it's really interesting because this is an older wine for sure. There's nothing showing youthful in the appearance of this wine. And then holding it up here, whoa, I mean, I can smell it from down here. It's really pronounced. This wine is like just jumping out of the glass. And if I give it a little swirl so I can smell it a little bit even more so, I'm finding there's a little bit of primary fruit, but it's very, very subtle, very slight. Maybe some orange peel. There's a hint of secondary, maybe some vanilla. And I don't, sometimes you get vanilla in wines and it is not from oak. A lot of times, especially with older wines, when you get these dried fruit characters, they somehow mimic a vanilla-like character. And I think it may be coming from that. Especially when you get things, as you get in this wine, that caramel, that toffee, there's, oftentimes you get those aromas with vanilla. So your mind sort of almost tricks you into thinking there's vanilla there. So I get, besides the coffee and all those things, walnut, some chocolate, and then some dried fruit, a little dried cherry, some dried plum, leather, and earth. And to me, this wine is fully developed on the nose. Why? Well, it's really dominated by tertiary notes. So that we don't often come across wines like this in most of our classes, because we generally drink wines that have been on the market just recently, and they're currently available, so they haven't been aged that long. But this is a wine that I can definitely tell has been around. So let's see how it tastes. It's a sweet wine for sure. Definitely it's got a lot of sweetness. It's got pretty good acid, not particularly high, but somewhere in that medium to medium plus range. The tannins are very low. Now, just looking at the wine, it may be hard to tell if this is a red wine or a white wine, but I did get a little bit of tawny, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but tawny is mostly kind of brownish color, but you might still get a hint of red or ruby color. And to me, there is a little bit of that in this wine. So other than that, when I taste this wine, I think it's got even more alcohol than the last one. It's a good thing I had that Prosecco to start with, because that was only 11.5% alcohol. And I would be on the floor by now if I had 3 wines that were over 17%. But this is definitely high alcohol. And then also pretty good body, medium plus. And then the finish and the pronounced intensity are exceedingly great. So really high pronounced intensity, very long finish. The finish is that wonderful, complex vanilla, caramel, dried fruit, fig, prune. I'm a big fan of fruitcake, and I would love to have this wine with a fruitcake. To be honest, this would be a really nice companion to that. So on the finish of this wine, given that it's long, we've got great balance, we've got really good intensity, complexity. Again, another outstanding wine. But it is fully developed, and I don't think it's going to get any better. It will hold for a few years, but it's really right at the peak of perfection right now. So what is this? Here are the choices now. You can see here it's an option of a Bagnols Hors d'Age, which is an aged version of a Bagnol, a cream sherry, a Momsey Madeira, 15-year-old, or a tawny port, 30 years old. So which of those options do you think this wine is?
Okay, go ahead and lock your answers in again in the comments section. We'll give you a couple of seconds here, 30 seconds to lock in your answers, and then Peter will reveal. A lot of clues in that tasting note.
I'm going to have to share these wines with you, Christian, because they're just mind-boggling. I mean, they're so good. So good.
I will definitely drive across town to drink good wine.
And in a cold, sort of wintry, rainy day like today, a little extra alcohol doesn't hurt.
You bet. Yeah, keep you nice and warm.
Warms up.
Peter and I were just laughing. We as Californians are very, very sensitive to even the slightest temperature change. And
yeah.
Okay.
Like yesterday it was 27 degrees in Napa in the morning too. It's like, whoa. Okay, so what do you
we
think?
have a lot of fans of D, tawny port, 30-year-old.
30 years old. That's pretty old.
Yeah, that's old. Almost as old as I am.
Almost, not quite. Christian just had his birthday, by the way. We should sing you happy birthday.
Oh no, please don't.
Okay, I won't. I can't. So you guys are good. This is indeed a 30-year-old tawny port from Kopke. Now, Kopke is one of these amazing producers. They actually sort of specialize in tawny ports, and they also have these Cojita ports. Cojita ports are also aged ports, but they have a vintage date on them. In fact, this producer, I believe, is the oldest port house that's still producing. They've been around since the early 1600s. And I got to tell you, this wine is just blows me away. It is so good. I did look online to see what the prices of these wines were. This one was actually about $150. But, this bottle will last me maybe another day or two, but it'll last a month. If you leave it open, it's really not going to deteriorate too much. And you can enjoy a little glass after dinner every night while you're, sitting by the fire and staying warm. This is a wine that is worth every single penny. I think this wine is just amazing, as is the Amarone, and of course Prosecco. 3 very distinct wines from the wonderful world of wine. So, any questions before I hand it off to you? Or we can maybe talk about what's coming up.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about what the Academy has coming up, and then I'll check in to see if there's any questions. I know we have some. You're continuing your exciting webinar series. I think you have two coming up. You want to tell our viewers about those?
Sure. Yeah, we do have one coming up on February 6th. So that's a week from this Saturday. And that is with Ben Hawkins. Ben is a sherry wine expert. And he's a great guy, by the way. We've had a couple of Zoom sessions getting to know him and talk to him. He's based in the UK. And, like most Brits, he's very intelligent. He's got a wry sense of humor, I think. I think you'll enjoy him immensely. He also has a book available. This webinar is part of our partnership with the Academy du Vin Library. And that book is still available to purchase. So go to our website and you can find the details how to do that. Like all of our webinars that we're doing for these special interviews, we do include a wine kit. Unfortunately, the wine kit for this has sold out completely. We're tasting 3 wines from Lustau, which should be a lot of fun. But if you want to go out and try to purchase those wines on your own, you can still do so. So we're tasting a Fino, an Amontillado, and a sweet PX sherry.
Yeah, and Ben is such a knowledgeable guy. I mean, that book is amazing. If you so for you to be able to pick his brain on sherry is going to be great for anyone studying for their fortified unit with the diploma. Yeah, that's an amazing book.
It is. Yeah, and then we also have 2 weeks after that, on February 20th, back for the third time. Third time's a charm, I guess, but no, she's already charming. Fiona Morrison, Master of Wine. Fiona, as you may know if you've been on our previous interviews, she is based in Bordeaux. She's married into the Thiaupont family. They own Chateau Le Pen, among some others, some very prestigious properties. And she's going to talk about Bordeaux from an interesting perspective, sort of things that you may not know about, sort of little hidden gems. What's new, what's exciting. And we do have a wine kit that will be available for that as well. There will be 4 wines. By the way, that announcement of that webinar is not yet up on the website. It will be by this weekend. I think we have an email blast going out on Saturday to announce all the details. But you heard it here first. And if you want to jump on that email when you get it on Saturday, you can go ahead and order the kits, sign up for the webinar. And I should mention, all of these webinars are free to attend. It's optional if you want to purchase the kit and the book. And there is a book that Fiona was a contributor to called En Bordeaux, which is also from the Academy du Vin Wine Library, that is also available for purchase. So those are a couple of upcoming things that I'm aware of, and I'm sure Christian may have some other details to it.
No, that's great. A lot of, and we look forward to more of those webinars with wines and books as well. And as Peter mentioned, they're always free, so make sure and sign up, even if you just want to tune in for the knowledge. So we have that, and then obviously every Wednesday we are rotating wine trivia and study hall. So next week's 2 p.m. Wednesday Facebook Live is going to be trivia, so make sure and join us for that. We do a bunch of Instagram lives, so follow us on Instagram at Napa Valley Wine Academy, where you can have some great access to other free content to continue your wine education. And then sign up for our newsletter. We're always doing something new classes coming down the pike. So stay tuned for that. We have an advanced deductive tasting course that we will be releasing very soon with wine tasting kits. So you'll be able to hone your blind tasting skills online in an online course with wine. So that should be really exciting. Peter, I hope
Christian, can I just interject real quick?
You may, absolutely.
You mentioned Instagram Lives, which are fabulous. They're great interviews. Yesterday, you were interviewed by Karen Wetzel, and I think a lot of our listeners know of you, but they maybe not know you as well as all of us do. And the interview yesterday was fantastic. I mean, your background is fascinating. You have such a rich history that helps bring a lot of great knowledge to our company. And you can go on Instagram Live and watch the recording of that. So anybody who missed it yesterday, treat yourself to a nice little interview with Christian that happened yesterday, and enjoy a glass of port or Amarone or Prosecco, whatever pleases you.
Exactly. Great. Well, thanks for sharing that. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Really love the participation. Hopefully you enjoy these Facebook Lives. We'd love for you to drop us a comment and recommend us to your friends as well. In the meantime, we'll see you next Wednesday. And stay safe, drink well, and thanks for your support. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.